You're listening to Don't Quote Me, It's Probably Nothing, the podcast where I take wild theories, sprinkle in some half remembered history, and serve it up with a side of, wait, am I high or is this actually interesting? I'm not an expert, but I did Google it once and now I can't stop spiraling. Hey, welcome to the first ever episode of Don't Quote Me, It's Probably Nothing, the podcast where we unravel the theories that make you go, wait, what? And then 10 minutes later, you're Googling ancient calendars at 2 a.m. and wondering if you were ever really born in the first place. I'm Kelly, your host, voice in the void and part-time conspiracy enabler. And today we're kicking things off with a theory that genuinely makes me question whether time is just an aggressively agreed upon suggestion, the phantom time hypothesis, or as I like to call it, what if it's actually the year 1728 and we've all been cosplaying modernity? Okay, I just have to add that I just went back and listened to that, and I don't know if you guys caught me say conspiracy, but I meant conspiracy. What even is the phantom time hypothesis? So in 1991, a German historian named Herbert Illig, actually I think it might be Heribert, but I don't know, like the I's silent or something. It's Herbert. So anyway, he said, has anyone else noticed that something's like off about the Middle Ages? And everyone was like, yeah, they were called the Dark Ages. But Illig took that confusion and said, okay, but what if they were like literally dark? As in completely made up. So his theory is that between the years of 614 and 911 AD, nearly 300 years of history were just fabricated. Like invented, just yeeted into the timeline. Sorry for that word though, but that's like all my kids talk about. It reminds me of that SNL skit where they're like, yeet, skirt, skirt, yeet. My kids are so gonna kill me if they ever hear this. But basically, that means the year that we're in now, 2025, is actually 1728, which honestly I am weirdly cool with. Like, put me in the woods with a cloak and a candle and like a questionable jar and I would be thriving. Like witchy vibes before it got me burnt at the stake. Yes, please. You would have no idea how bad I wanted to be like, did you say steak? Anyway, well, duh, I just said it. Anyway, I'd be like hexing some dude named Greg for like ghosting me via handwritten scroll. But then I'd be like making tea that, make him see my face every time he closed his eyes. So yeah, 1728. First, let's talk about the alleged time conspirators. There's Otto III, who was a Holy Roman Emperor, big into legacy. Otto ruled in the late 900s. He was young, ambitious, and according to Herbs, had a bit of a calendar complex. So he theorized that Otto wanted to rule in the year 1000, which was a symbolic, holy sounding year that would make him look divinely chosen, except he wasn't like quite there yet. So like, what do you do when your legacy doesn't match the calendar? Apparently you just fake 300 years of history. So Otto was basically obsessed with reviving the glory of Rome and being seen as the next great emperor, a Christian leader ordained by divine timing. So the year 1000 wasn't just a date, it was branding. So ruling in 999 was like showing up to a costume party in khakis. But like ruling in 1000 is like, I don't know, that's like main character energy. So there's Pope Sylvester II, and like before he was Pope, he was, I'm gonna butcher this name, he was Gerbert of Aurillac. That sounds right. So he was like a math nerd, an astronomer, and probably the one guy in medieval Europe who understood algebra and why the moon was weird. He studied in Islamic Spain. Islamic Spain? Is that a thing? Islamic Spain? Because, like, I'm under the impression they're two completely different countries, though. Huh. Anyway, yeah, that's what it says. He studied in Islamic Spain. He brought back advanced science and was so ahead of his time that people thought he was practicing sorcery. Like, he's smart and good with numbers. Must be the devil. So Herb believed Sylvester and Otto were buddies. And when Otto said, like, let's make it the year 1000, Sylvester was basically like, bet. And because there was, like, no internet, no Twitter historians, and literally no functioning timekeepers, like, who's even going to check? And then lastly, there's Constantine the Seventh. I'm not even attempting to pronounce this name. I'll spell it for you, though. So it's Porphyrogenitus. Porphyrogenitus. Proprogio. That's from the Santa Claus, in case you guys were wondering. But anyway, it just means he was born in a fancy part of the palace, which made his imperial claim extra legit. So Constantine ruled earlier than Otto and Sylvester, but he gets looped into the conspiracy because he's commissioned a lot of historical records. Like, a lot. He was out here editing timelines like a Byzantine Wikipedia mod with, like, no chill. So Herb thinks those works may have been retrofitted to make this fake 297-year stretch more believable. So, like, were these men in cahoots, or were they just incredibly extra, or did they actually shift the gears of time to boost their own careers? So there's this thing called the calendar drift argument. So before the Gregorian calendar, we used to use the Julian calendar, which was, like, not that great. It drifted off from the solar year by about, like, 11 minutes per year. And then over centuries, this added up. But by the time Pope Gregory VIII introduced the Gregorian calendar in 1582, there should have been a 13-day difference between the seasons and the calendar, but they only corrected 10 days. So Herb was like, well, where did the other 3 days go? And then literally answered it himself and was like, well, we skipped 297 years, that's where. But historians are like, my guy, math is hard and you literally misunderstood it, which felt my dude because I also misunderstand the maths. So let's talk about the French Revolutionary calendar. So France had a big old revolution in 1970. No, it was not. It was in 1789. Girl. So anyway, they were like, no more kings. And then they were also like, while we're at it, no more normal months either. So they made their own calendar. And it had 12 months of exactly 30 days. And each month was split into 3 10-day weeks called decades, which I think is actually supposed to be pronounced like decades, but there's that little slanted line above the E. So now I'm over here saying, like, decades. And honestly, like, as soon as I read it, my brain went straight to Game of Thrones. Like when Daenerys says Dracarys and her dragon just casually, like, nukes the city block. I mean, I feel that. Anyway, welcome to the inside of my brain. Please keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times. So back to the months. They are named after weather. Not even kidding. I will do my best to pronounce these, but I don't read French, obviously. So there's brumaire, whatever, means foggy. And then pluvieux means rainy. Fruitidor, something, means fruit time. And then thermidor, that's literally how it's spelled, but it's probably like thermidoir. Maybe. That was my French accent. But that means hot. And they even had bonus days at the end of the year because 12 months times 30 days is only 360 days. So they added 5 or 6 celebration days for things like virtue, talent, opinion, and labor, which literally sounds like a chaotic office party. But it still didn't work. And after years of all of that nonsense, Napoleon showed up and was just like, yeah, we're done here. And then he brought back the normal calendar. Just know that France once said, we fixed tyranny, let's fix Tuesday. I don't know what that accent was. The archaeological gap is Herb claimed that there's a suspicious lack of archaeological evidence, like buildings, records, art, coins from that time between 614 and 911 AD. So there are some things, but like not many, as you would expect from 3 centuries of supposed history. So his conclusion was basically like, oh, those centuries just didn't happen. Like they were scribbled in by scribes and emperors to pad the timeline. Like, no, never happened. So let's talk about Charlemagne. So Herb literally believed that Charlemagne either didn't exist or was a composite character made out of like multiple rulers. Like, picture like a medieval Frankenstein designed to rule the fake years. So Charlemagne was said to be smart, strong, Christian AF, and so tall he could like dunk on horses. That was weird. Anyway, that's what Hillig said too. Illig, Herb. He was like, yeah, that's suspicious. That's weird. Basically like too powerful, too perfect. Probably propaganda. But historians counter like with receipts. They're like coins, writings, royal lineages, tombs, and documents from surrounding cultures that like mention him. Not to mention the Islamic world, the Byzantines and the Chinese like all had dated events that line up with the phantom years. So unless everyone across the globe decided to like gaslight the calendar, like his argument doesn't really hold. So why is this theory so fun to believe? I think it's because it taps into like something real, that feeling that like history is broken, time doesn't make sense. Like it gives us an answer, even if it's like a silly, weird, probably wrong answer, to the very real feeling that something's off. And like, let's be honest, it's kind of satisfying to imagine like a bored pope and an emperor saying like, let's just say it's 1000. Like, who's gonna check? The peasants? So is it the year 2025, or are we still waiting for the Enlightenment to kick off? Are we living in a carefully curated timeline stitched together by emperors with god complexes? Or did good old Herbie Herbs need a better hobby? Either way, it's probably nothing. Thanks for spiraling with me on Don't Quote Me, It's Probably Nothing. Next week we ask the big one. What if nothing's real? Everything's code, and deja vu is just the simulation glitching again. We're diving headfirst into simulation theory, where reality might just be a badly coded beta test, and someone's definitely rounding up the years for the aesthetic. Follow, rate, tell your weirdest friend, and remember, time's fake, history's sus, and we might all be NPCs in a laggy universe running on 2007 Wi-Fi. See you next week, or maybe you already have. You're still listening. I was wondering if you would stay till the end. I thought it would be a cool idea to add one of my favorite songs this week at the end of the podcast for you guys to listen to, and then maybe it'll become one of your favorite songs. So for today's episode, I'm going to play you a song from Moody Judy called Talk Me Down. No. Is it called Talk Me Down? Yeah, it's called Talk Me Down. Just kidding. I'm not going to play it because I think that's illegal. But I really think you should go search up that song on whatever platform you listen to your music to, because it's amazing, and like you should add it to your playlist and scream, sing it in the car and pretend you're in a music video. Okay, bye.